Welcome back, class, to another lesson in programming in Java. In this lesson, we'll take a deep dive into loops and arrays. We'll discuss the different kinds of loops. We'll also discuss nested loops. And naturally, a very complementary topic to loops is going to be arrays. We'll talk about how these work really well together. So for our introduction, as usual, we'll do a little bit of review, and we will introduce a new operator as well. Before we do the new operator, let's review compound assignment operators. Remember, this is a shorthand. So instead of writing x equals x plus 3, you can just do plus equals 3. You do the same thing with subtraction, multiplication, division, and the modulus operator. Relational operators, of course, if you're making any comparison in a conditional statement or in a condition inside of another type of statement, then relational operators are extremely useful. Java statements, we've reviewed this one over and over again. Remember, it's a single unit of execution. It could be declaration, expression, or control structure. We're actually going to learn a new control structure with loops. Logical operators, that's for chaining together conditions and making really complex Boolean expressions. Or if you use the not operator, right, it's just to reverse the value. Scope, because we're introducing a new control structure. So we talked about if, else statements, or if else statements. Those use the curly braces, right? So curly braces means there's a block of code, meaning that we're working with some kind of scope. So that's going to be the same for loops because they're also going to be using curly braces, and therefore we'll have a scope within that block of code. And then we have the if, else statement, a little bit of review. Remember, this is a control structure, control flow statement, which essentially allows our code to make decisions. Switch statement. The reason we're going to review this one for our introduction is because of the break keyword. It's going to make a comeback. Check it out. The break statement is used to exit a control structure early, common in switches and in loops, which we'll be covering today. And then complex expressions. Remember, you can short circuit right to your advantage. A little bit of review there. And then looping statements, we covered this very briefly last time. But of course, we're going to take a deep dive in this lesson and properly explore all different types of loops and how they work. And then before we get to loops, we're going to introduce our new operator. Those are unary operators. So our operators that operate on a single operand, a lot of opera in that statement, but performing simple operations like incrementing and decrementing. So there's definitely more unary operators than these two, but these are the most useful to us, so we're not going to cover quite all of them right in this category, just these two. So increment operator is plus plus. That's going to increase the value of a variable by 1. So typically used right with integers. So day of year, let's say day of year was 10. If we do day of year plus plus, it becomes 11. With the decrement operator, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to decrease the value of a variable by 1. So if day of year is 10 and we do minus minus, day of year becomes 9 because it went down by 1. So yeah, this is kind of looks similar to the compound operators, but exclusively, right, is going to be increasing or decreasing by 1. Just like that. So the order in which you put the increment or decrement operators, it actually matters. So we can pre-increment or pre-decrement. We could also post-increment or post-decrement, depending on where we put the operator. So if you put it before, it's called pre. If you put it after, it's called post. Kind of like prefix, right? Pre. It's not called postfix, right? In English, it's called suffix, but in programming, we do call it postfix. So if you put the plus plus beforehand, it's going to do the incrementing first, then it'll give you the new value. If you do plus plus afterwards, it's going to return the current value, and it's not going to increment right away. That change is not going to happen until the next statement. So I know it's kind of weird, right? Because we haven't seen this operator before. It might not make a lot of sense just yet. So let's go ahead and look at an example. So we're going to see how putting the operator before and after might modify, right, the behavior of this program. So pre-increment will immediately return the new value, while post-increment will not change it until afterwards. So let's check it out with the pre. So int I is equal to 5. So we do plus plus I. Naturally, I becomes 6. Now we put the plus plus beforehand so that the a gets the new value of 6. So int a will be 6. Makes sense, right? It's exactly what we expect to happen. But something weird happens when we put the plus plus after the I. So again, we're going to reassign I back to 5. So, we're going to undo these changes here for the first step. So I is 5 again. So int b equals to I plus plus. Now our brain reads that and says I plus plus, well, 5 went to 6, so b should be 6. But when you put the operator after the variable, after the I, b is not going to see that change happen. Only the next statement is going to see I change to 6. So as far as b knows, I hasn't changed because we did a post increment. So the change doesn't happen immediately. Only the next statement is going to see that. So for example, I did I plus plus, and then I did int b is equal to I, then b would be 6. So let me write that out. See if I can get my annotation tools. 1 second. So yeah, let's say I did I is equal to 5, and then I squeezed in here an I plus plus, plus plus, and then I did int b is equal to just I, then b would be 6. B would be 6. But this is not the case, right? Case here is that we did the post increment at the same line as B. So B is not going to pick up on the change. Unfortunately, only the next statement will. So B is going to be 5. I becomes 6. It definitely becomes 6, but this happens after the assignment. So yeah, post increment, I rarely use it. There are cases where you'll use it. For the most part, you're going to use the pre-increment because you want, that change to happen immediately. But there are definitely cases, right, where you might use post increment. But as far as we know, like I said, we're going to be using the pre-increment a lot more.